We've got a mechanics article for the Forgotten Realms set here. Let's take a peek at it. Should we watch the YouTube video? Let's watch the YouTube video. Let's do that. Let's make sure y'all can hear it.
Sooner or later, most D&D adventures end up in a dungeon, and for good reason. The action, the mystery, the loot. Dungeons are where it's at, and it's time to venture forth on this edition of First Look: Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Dungeon is a new card type. There are 3 dungeons being introduced in this set, including Dungeon of the Mad Mage. That's a lot to take in.
You gain a life, scry, create a treasure token, target creature can't attack until your next turn, scry 2, draw 3 cards, reveal them, you may cast one without paying its mana cost. Yeah, are these like really complicated sagas? Let's sit and learn.
Why don't you pause the video and read, and we'll catch up in a few.
Look at how prophetic I am, chat. I paused it before he told us to pause it. See, this is why I'm a professional Magic the Gathering player. The person creating this video knows that your typical Magic player needs to be told you should stop and read because reading is busted. Whereas I intuitively just knew that reading should be a thing that we're about to do. Thanks for the bits busted. Reading is busted, and I expect it to be nerfed in the next balance patch.
And welcome back. Now, dungeons, they don't go in your deck. They start outside the game. You can keep them with your sideboard, but, and this is important, they don't take up sideboard spots.
Huh. I am certain that the dungeon mechanic is bound to go over well, because never in the history of Magic has something that starts outside of the game with your deck ended up being busted. So I have high confidence that this mechanic is about to work out fantastically for us.
You just have access to them, and you bring them into the game whenever you venture into the dungeon.
No. Don't you get rid of these. I want to look at them. Okay, so each player loses a life, scry 1, gain a life. Each player loses 2 life unless they discard a card. Discard a card and sacrifice an artifact and a creature, a land. Create a legendary 4/4 black god horror token with death touch. So something that's kind of neat here is that there's varying levels here. So you could like do this where it's more brutal, but I assume it happens faster. Create a goblin, get a treasure. Each opponent loses 1, you gain 1, put 1 counter on target creature. Target creature's -4 attack, draw a card. And like this one has a really big payoff at the end, but it's super deep.
Dungeon. Venture into the dungeon is a new keyword action that lets you interact with dungeon cards. That action is found on cards that very much do go in your deck, like Shortcut Seeker.
Okay, so your dungeon is picked with your deck, but you have to actually play cards. You have to actually play cards that make you do stuff with them. So to set a low bar, it's probably going to go over better than Companion did.
When you're told to venture into the dungeon, first ask yourself, Self, am I in a dungeon? Now, you don't know what that means yet, so let's just say you're not. If you venture into the dungeon while you're not in a dungeon, you take a dungeon card from outside the game and put it into the command zone. Put a venture marker on the first room at the top.
I like how we just use command zone for everything now. Should that be rebranded? I feel like the command zone needs to be rebranded. Cause like, it's like a catch-all out. It's like the not exile. It's the you can't interact with this zone, right? Because exile used to be you can't interact with this, but now we like process cards and stuff. Yeah. Maybe we should call it, the absolutely freaking forever removed from the game zone. That's what it should be called. You know what's gonna be great though, chat? Whenever we venture into the dungeon, I'm gonna get to sing "Welcome to the dungeon." I'm gonna get to a little guitar riff there with the air guitar. It's a good content mechanic.
A venture marker is something small that you can use to keep track of what room you're in. For example, a coin, a die, an expertly painted miniature, whatever you have handy. Every time you enter a room, including the first one, that room's room ability triggers. The effect of that ability is what you see printed in each room. For example,
Stop it, YouTube.
when you enter the yawning portal, you gain 1 life. The room names are for flavor and don't affect gameplay. Now that you're in a dungeon, the next time you venture into the dungeon, move your venture marker down 1 space. Follow the arrows. Your next venture will carry you to the dungeon level, and the one after that will give you a choice. You could head to the Goblin Bazaar or the Twisted Caverns. Either way, you'll end up in the Lost level. One more choice determines how you'll get to the Deep Mines, and finally, the Mad Wizard's Lair. Each player gets their own dungeon, and a player can be in only one dungeon at a time. Once you enter a dungeon, you must complete that dungeon before starting a new one. Every time you venture, you'll progress deeper and deeper until you hit the final room at the bottom of the card. As soon as the final room ability resolves, or it's countered or somehow leaves the stack, the dungeon is removed from the game. This action means you've completed the dungeon. Completing a dungeon is great for a few reasons.
By removed from the game, does that mean it's put into the removed from the game zone? Or does it just go back to existing in your outside the game, but not in your sideboard, but also not in the command zone? Whatever we're referring to that as.
Next time you venture into the dungeon, you can start a new one. Now you could jump right back into the same dungeon you just completed for another go. Or pick a dungeon you haven't braved before. It's your story. Some cards like Gloomstalker offer rewards for dungeon completion. It doesn't matter if Gloomstalker was around for any of your dungeon adventures. Even if you completed a dungeon earlier in the game, Gloomstalker will have Double Strike. These dungeons are filled with rewards that put you in a better spot to win the game. Venture boldly but strategically, and claim what is yours. Adventures in the Forgotten Realms is available everywhere on July 23rd. Check out your local retailer or game store.
So, for reference, this set releases, maybe they're going to say that here in a second, released on Magic Arena on July 8th. Seriously? You had a video explaining the mechanic, and there is all of this dead space here in the middle, and just not a mention of Magic Arena or the release date on Magic Arena anywhere. Like, come on. I mean, I guess esports is dead and we just don't care about it anymore. It's so weird to me. I assumed it was just gonna fill in during the last couple of seconds here, but just hard nope. Actual just giant gaping space with no mention of their premier digital product. It's where the YouTube recommended videos go. Yeah, I guess you're probably right. You're probably right, but also come on. All right, so what does it say? So they've got higher resolution images of the dungeons that we already looked at. We got some example cards here. Selfless Paladin. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon. Other creatures you control get 1 as long as you complete dungeon. So this will be the kind of something that I'm interested to see. And by interested to see, I mean I'm likely going to be depressed by the answer to. Is that these cards are probably not going to be constructed playable. Yeah, someone just said this card seems pretty good. It doesn't. This card is a 3/3 for 3. Okay, when it enters the battlefield or attack. So let's look at this card in the context of the dungeons that we've seen. So this card says enter a dungeon, which means when it enters play, you can scry 1, make your opponent lose 1, or gain a life. And then when it attacks, you could get a treasure token or get a thing, or like, yeah. So like, I don't know that any of these starting effects are good enough as an enters play effect. And like, look at Dungeon of the Mad Maze, right? This is obviously the biggest payoff. You have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have to do 7 times to get through here. Like, that's asking a lot. And like even the fastest one, right? So they lose a life, discard a card, sacrifice an artifact creature land. So you're never doing this. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 to get a 4/4. These are magic cards. This is the next standard legal magic set. Okay, so they're just rehashing what they did in the video. This one is symmetrical. This one is symmetrical. You're correct. But still, this is like 4 times to get through this is a lot. It's a lot, chat. We have an adventure planeswalker. Like, come on. Is this a leak or is this an official spoiler? Someone tell me this low resolution crap that look at this text. This has to have been a leak, right? I mean, they have both images. All right. Anywho, +1 venture into the dungeon. So again, with that, you have to decide, are any of these worth a +1? Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature from among them and put it into your hand. If it's legendary, you gain 3 life. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You get emblem with creatures you control, get trample, haste, and 2/2 for each differently named dungeon you've completed. So her ultimate doesn't really do anything. I mean, I don't know that, like, I would say this card sucks, but so this card definitely is not playable in the current standard environment. Standard is going to go down in power level a significant amount in the fall when rotation happens. And Wizards, if you're out there, if you'd like us to be excited about playing Standard, it's not too late. You can still announce that you're rotating Eldraine and Ikoria early. But yeah, so I'd be very surprised if something like this is playable in the current Standard environment, just like minimal amounts of value. Yeah, just not great. It's cute. It's cute. I think from a design perspective, it's super neat. I think it's super, super neat from a design perspective, but it's definitely not going to be played. It's got a cute little frog friend. Maybe we'll get a frog friend card. Yeah, 6 is a lot of cards. And 6 is a lot of cards, and like the fact that these don't take up a sideboard slot means that, like, what? She, like, +1s. What is that noise? Oh, it's raining. She like, +1s to scry, +1 to make a token, lose a life, draw a card. Like, that's not terrible. To set a low bar, I think she's probably better than this Selfless Paladin. But also another important thing to remember, and this is why I'm not going to do daily spoiler review during spoiler season. I'm going to do a big spoiler review at the very end of the season, because this adventure mechanic, especially, these cards could suddenly be very playable if there's a number of other cards that incidentally venture into the dungeon. And I would be surprised if they give us a bunch of effects like that and it ends up playable. But they might surprise us and it might be pushed a little bit. But it's definitely a wait and see. We can't fully evaluate either of these cards until we see what the surrounding cast looks like in terms of how quickly and consistently you're entering into the dungeon. So what else? We had a couple other articles here. Mastery details. So it'll be 27 booster packs, mastery orbs. Oh, that's why we saw the Planeswalker, because they gave us, we're getting an avatar for her. She's a new Planeswalker. 10 mythic rare ICRs. Some event tokens, some golden gems. Get some pets. Oh, I liked. Is there a picture of the dragon pet? How could you tell me there's a dragon pet coming and not show me a picture of the dragon pet? Oh, is this it in the middle? Maybe this is it in the middle. Dungeons will not take up sideboard slots. What was this yesterday? This was just sleeves and stuff that are coming, right? Oh, right, we did see her. We did see her yesterday. Oh, is this the new pet? Maybe? Or is that something else? All right. Should we play some games? Maybe we should play some Magic.